They told you Pluto was declassified as a planet because it was too small, that it didn't meet the scientific criteria, but that's not the real reason. Not even close. My name is Dr. Marcus Hale, former astrophysicist with the DEEP Solar Observation Initiative, a black-budget program buried so deep within government archives that even most of NASA doesn't know it exists. And today, for the first time, I'm breaking my silence, because the world deserves to know the truth. For me, real reason Pluto was quietly stripped of its planetary status wasn't a matter of astronomy. It was a matter of containment. It all began with a transmission. In 1999, the New Horizons mission was publicly announced to study Pluto and the Kuiper Belt. But what wasn't revealed was that the mission wasn't exploratory. It was confirmatory. Decades earlier in the 1970s, Pioneer 10 and 11 sent back anomalous readings from the outer solar system. Subtle gravitational irregularities, unexpected shifts in trajectory, and most chilling of all, an unexplainable void detected near Pluto's orbital path. For years, the data was dismissed, buried beneath layers of bureaucratic denial. But in 1983, an experimental deep space probe, one the public never knew existed, was sent beyond Neptune. Its mission to perform a direct flyby of Pluto to confirm the presence of the anomaly. The probe approached Pluto in 1986, transmitting data in real time. At first, everything appeared consistent with our models: a cold, rocky body, a surface of nitrogen ice, no atmosphere to speak of. But then, it detected something impossible: massive localized gravitational distortion emanating from a region beneath Pluto's southern pole. The probe's instruments recorded what can only be described as a tear in space-time, a region where physical laws collapsed. And something else, something far beyond human comprehension, leaked through. The probe sent back a final image before losing contact entirely, a faint, iridescent sphere hovering just above Pluto's surface, surrounded by an aurora of colors no spectrum analysis could classify. And at its center, a dark void, not a shadow, not an absence, but a deliberate opening. Within days, every agency with access to the probe's data was pulled into the investigation: NASA, the Department of Defense, and the highest levels of global intelligence. The conclusion was unanimous. This was not a natural phenomenon, it was a gateway, a portal to a region of space, or perhaps another dimension entirely, one that had been dormant for eons, until we approached too closely, until we observed it. The decision was made in a series of emergency closed-door meetings. Pluto's planetary status would be revoked, not for scientific accuracy, but to discourage further public interest. The narrative was carefully crafted. Pluto is too small. It doesn't clear its orbit. Simple, clean, unquestionable. But beneath the surface, classified missions were launched in secret. Satellites and probes designed not to study Pluto, but to monitor it. Because what we had discovered wasn't just a portal, it was active. Sometimes it would pulse, emitting gravitational waves so intense they would subtly alter the orbits of distant Kuiper Belt objects. Other times, it would open, just for moments, long enough for something to pass through. We don't know what, we still don't know. But one thing is certain: the solar system has a door at its edge, and we were never supposed to find it. The real reason Pluto was declassified wasn't to update a textbook. It was to protect humanity from asking the wrong questions. And now, you know the truth. After the probe vanished in 1986, panic spread through the highest levels of global defense and scientific command, not because we had lost a multi-billion-dollar machine, but because we had confirmed the portal was real. The first instinct was to monitor it, to understand its cycles, its patterns, its limits, if it had any. Thus began Operation Umbra, a clandestine multinational effort jointly managed by NASA's Black Ops Division and a coalition of agencies we weren't even supposed to know existed. The public knew only of the Voyager probes leaving the solar system, celebrated in press conferences and school textbooks. But in the shadows, we launched something else: Umbra 1, an Unmanned autonomous probe designed not to land on Pluto, but to hover at a safe observational distance, outfitted with experimental gravimetric sensors, quantum field analyzers, and real-time transmission capabilities via a prototype deep space communication array. In 1991, Umbra 1 entered Pluto's orbit and, immediately, the readings went haywire. Space-time distortions near the southern pole, electromagnetic pulses of unknown origin, and, most disturbingly, sudden mass fluctuations from Pluto itself, as if its mass was increasing and decreasing in irregular, impossible patterns, as if the planet wasn't a planet at all, but a skin stretched over something else. For months, Umbra 1 orbited silently, collecting data. And then, in October 1992, the portal opened. Our instruments couldn't directly image what was inside. It was like trying to photograph a concept. But what they did capture was something even more terrifying. A signal, not a random burst of radiation, not gravitational waves, but a structured transmission, encoded with a complexity beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Non-linear, fractal data patterns that no quantum computer on Earth could fully decrypt. But there was one fragment we could translate. One that repeated over and over, at increasing intervals as the portal expanded. A simple phrase. Written in perfect mathematical logic, "You are not ready." The portal pulsed, then collapsed. Within minutes, Umbra 1 was gone. No debris, no malfunction alerts, just erased, as if it had been plucked from our dimension entirely. The silence that followed was deafening. For years, the project stalled. No new missions were launched, no more probes, just watching. But in 2003, the portal opened again. This time, it was different. It didn't just emit structured signals, it pulled. Dozens of Kuiper Belt objects, some larger than cities, were observed shifting their trajectories inexplicably, drawn toward Pluto's southern pole, as if something on the other side was feeding. That's when the most controversial decision in scientific history was made, one that changed everything. The International Astronomical Union, IAU, acting on classified recommendations, moved to declassify Pluto. Publicly, they claimed, it was about clearing its orbit, about scientific rigor. But internally, we all knew the truth. It was about erasure. If Pluto was no longer a planet, it would vanish from the public's imagination. No more school projects, no more planetary missions, no more curiosity, just another icy rock in the void. But the portal didn't care about definitions. It kept opening, kept pulsing, kept sending its messages. In 2015, despite official denials, New Horizons was launched toward Pluto. The public thought it was an innocent scientific mission, but inside NASA, we knew it was the most dangerous gamble humanity had ever made, and when it arrived, the world celebrated. The breathtaking images, mountains of water ice, plains of frozen nitrogen, a heart-shaped region that the media adored, but what they didn't release was the final set of data, transmitted just before New Horizons passed beyond Pluto. Gravitational anomalies near the southern pole, an inexplicable absence of mass in a region where there should have been solid rock, and one last image, quickly. Redacted from every database and report, a fracture in the surface, a tear in the ice, perfectly circular, pulsing with an inner light, not reflected by the sun, but emanating from somewhere else. The portal was still there, still active, and now, with New Horizons having mapped Pluto in exquisite detail, we knew something we had long feared. The portal was growing. What had once been a hidden dimensional tear was now becoming a breach, one that might not be content to remain at the edge of the solar system, but might one day reach out to us, and the only thing stopping it was the thin, fraying illusion that Pluto was nothing more than a dwarf planet, a celestial afterthought. But the truth is far more terrifying. Pluto isn't a relic of the solar system's past. It's a gateway to our possible future, or our inevitable end. The data from New Horizons was the final confirmation we needed. But it also ignited a crisis among the hidden scientific elite, because the question that had haunted us for decades was no longer hypothetical. Not, is the portal real, but what's on the other side? Theories flooded the black research networks. Classified astrophysics think tanks ran simulations day and night, attempting to model what could exist beyond a space-time fracture at the edge of our solar system. Some argued that it was a bridge, an Einstein-Rosen wormhole leading to another region of space, perhaps another galaxy, or even another universe entirely. But others, the ones whose opinions carried the most weight, were convinced it wasn't just a tunnel through space. It was a dimensional interface, a place where the very fabric of reality twisted into forms we couldn't comprehend, where physics as we knew it broke down, where entities or forces beyond our understanding might reside. Or worse, might already be aware of us. After the probe Umbra 1 disappeared in 1992, most of the scientific community involved agreed on one policy above all: non-interference. We would watch, we would monitor, but we would never cross the threshold. But not everyone agreed. In 2006, shortly after Pluto's declassification was formalized, a rogue faction within the Umbra project, later dubbed the Gatekeepers, proposed something audacious. If the portal was a threat, it needed to be sealed. Using an array of experimental quantum field disruptors, they believed it was possible to create a gravitational counterpulse, an artificial vibration that could stitch the space-time fracture. The plan was codenamed Operation Lockdown. In 2008, a series of modified kinetic impactors were launched under the guise of minor Kuiper Belt exploration missions, their true destination, Pluto's southern pole. Each was equipped with a QFD quantum field disruptor, designed to detonate near the portal and seal it permanently. But it didn't work. The first 3 impactors simply vanished upon entering Pluto's orbit. No impact, no debris, no signal. The 4th, however, managed to transmit one final data burst before its systems went dark. A low-frequency audio file, deeply encoded but eventually decrypted by our team. It was not random noise, not cosmic radiation, but a sound, a voice, indistinct, distorted by the physics-defying nature of the region, but undeniably structured. And though debate raged for months over what the message said, one interpretation emerged as the most plausible. 3 simple words: do not close. After that, Operation Lockdown was abandoned because the risk was too great. If something on the other side was not only aware of us, but also capable of intercepting and responding to our attempts at containment, then we weren't dealing with a simple, natural phenomenon. We were dealing with an intelligence, and maybe even more terrifying, one that had been waiting for us to cross a threshold we were never meant to cross. By 2015, when New Horizons transmitted those final images of the fracture pulsing with unearthly light, the decision was made at the highest level. We do nothing, not because we didn't want to, but because we couldn't. Any attempt to close the portal might provoke retaliation, or worse, trigger an event that could destabilize not just Pluto, but the entire solar system. So instead, the plan shifted from containment to obfuscation. Pluto remained a dwarf planet in the public eye. New Horizons data was scrubbed of any anomalies before being released to the public, and the true nature of the southern pole fracture was classified to a level so deep it didn't even officially exist. But behind the scene, our most advanced observatories, many of them operating in deep space under secret military contracts, continued to monitor the portal. And then, in 2021, the unthinkable happened. The portal opened again, but this time it didn't close. The gravitational distortions extended beyond Pluto's immediate orbit, warping nearby Kuiper Belt objects and sending shockwaves through the Oort cloud. Our instruments detected something unprecedented, not mass moving through the portal, but information-dodged streams of exotic particles never before recorded in nature. Particles that didn't interact with matter in any known way, except to subtly alter the quantum spin of everything they passed through. A message, not in language, but in physics itself. And that's when the realization set in. The portal wasn't just a passive doorway, it was an antenna. Transmitter, not built by us, not even necessarily by life as we understand it, but by something. Something ancient, something vast, something that might already be looking through from the other side and wondering if we are ready. Because for all our attempts to monitor, contain, or deny it, the portal is still there, still pulsing, still calling, and maybe, just maybe, it was never about keeping us out, but about waiting for the right moment to let something else in. It was in late 2023 when we realized the containment efforts hadn't just failed, they had been utterly irrelevant. The portal wasn't something we could control. It wasn't a structure we could close. It wasn't even a phenomenon bound by our laws of physics. It was a process. One that had been set in motion long before we first gazed at Pluto through our telescopes. A process that perhaps had been waiting for us to reach a certain level of technological maturity. A process that required a signal, a trigger, and we had sent it. Not once, but many times. Through every probe, every signal, every time we dared to observe too closely, we had been knocking on a door, not realizing that something was standing just on the other side, waiting for us to finish the sequence. And now, it was open. The first sign wasn't a flash of light, or an explosion, or some dramatic cinematic event. It was silence. In January 2024, the Outer Solar Observatory stopped receiving data from all probes stationed beyond Neptune. First, the ones monitoring Pluto, then those stationed on the fringes of the Kuiper Belt, then, inexplicably, even the long range. Signals from Voyager 1 and 2, both lost within a span of hours. We assumed technical failure, but the redundancy of the systems made that impossible. Something had interrupted them. Simultaneously, gravitational wave detectors across Earth began recording anomalies, subtle at first, barely distinguishable from background cosmic noise, but then increasing exponentially, waves emanating from Pluto. But they weren't radiating outward in all directions like a supernova would. They were targeted, directed, straight toward the inner solar system, toward us. For decades, we had believed that whatever lay on the other side of the portal was passive, dormant, or, at the very least, indifferent to our presence. We were wrong. The signal was not a message. It was not communication. It was an announcement. The portal was now fully open, and whatever had been lurking beyond that fracture in space-time had begun to move through. Telescopes trained on Pluto's southern pole captured images that were immediately classified at the highest level, images I was never supposed to see. But I did. The fracture, once just a faint distortion in the ice, had expanded into a massive, swirling vortex of iridescent light and dark energy, a maelstrom that defied any attempt at measurement. Around it, Pluto itself was being consumed, not disintegrating, but folding, collapsing in on itself as the portal expanded, wrapping the planetoid into a dimensional envelope that no longer obeyed the spatial geometry of our universe. And then, the readings changed. It wasn't just energy moving through the portal, it was massed objects, large, complex, and structured, were detected emerging from the portal's event horizon. Not meteors, not ice fragments, but constructs, geometries that our sensors couldn't fully resolve, shapes that seemed to shift the longer we observed them, as if reality itself struggled to define their existence. And then, the trajectory, not out into deep space, not toward the Kuiper Belt, but inward, toward Earth. We initiated every protocol we had developed over the past decades. Deflection systems, early warning satellites, even the long-rumored kinetic weapon arrays stationed in lunar orbit. None of them responded. Every system designed to defend against cosmic threats had been rendered inoperable, not by sabotage, not by human error, but by the same forces that had shut down our outer probes. We weren't being attacked in the conventional sense. We were being bypassed, like an ancient machine executing a protocol, moving forward regardless of what stood in its way. And that's when it became clear. The portal wasn't for us. It wasn't here to invade or to destroy. It was simply continuing. An ancient system unfolding across space and time, collecting or transforming every civilization foolish enough to cross a certain threshold of curiosity. And we, with all our ambition, with all our intelligence, with all our arrogance, had finally tripped the final sequence. I remember standing on the observation deck at the facility when the final alert sounded. The gravitational wave sensors spiked off the charts. The Earth's magnetic field fluctuated violently. And then, from every speaker, from every device connected to any network, a single phrase echoed, not in English, not in any Earth language, but translated through the data streams we had intercepted for decades. The same phrase sent to us over and over, in warnings we never understood, until now. You are ready. And in that moment, I understood. The portal hadn't been waiting for us to close it. It had been waiting for us to finish opening it, to prove we were technologically advanced enough, curious enough, foolish enough, to become the next addition to whatever lay beyond. And now, there was no stopping what had begun. The sky over the Pacific tore open first. A shimmering aurora of impossible colors spread from horizon to horizon. Then, the structures, those impossible constructs that had emerged from Pluto, began descending, not as weapons, but as extensions of the process, of the integration. Not all screamed, not all ran. Some simply stood, staring in awe, as the inevitable unfolded, and above it all the faintest final pulse, still echoing from Pluto, growing fainter, until, finally, silence. I don't know how much time has passed since the sky first fractured. Days? Hours? Does time even have meaning now? All I know is that the world I once knew is gone. It didn't end with explosions, no global wars, no screaming sirens of nuclear annihilation, just a quiet process, orderly, inevitable, like a machine executing code written long before we took our first steps as a species. The constructs, those impossible geometries that emerged from the portal, descended with a grace that belied their size. Not machines, not ships, but something in between, or perhaps something beyond either concept. They touched down across the planet, in deserts, on mountains, beneath oceans, each anchoring itself silently into the fabric of the world. No defenses worked, no weapons made contact, because this wasn't an attack. It was a completion, a final act in a play we didn't know we were a part of. The constructs began to pulse, each emitting the same frequency we had first heard from Pluto, the frequency we had mistakenly thought was just noise. But now, I understand. It was a synchronization signal, a call to align. Across every corner of the planet, technology began to respond. Satellites adjusted orbits autonomously, power grids recalibrated themselves, communication systems transmitted sequences of unknown data. And then, people began to change, not all at once, not in terror, but gradually, gently. First, their movements slowed, their expressions blanked. Then their bodies began to emit a faint, bioluminescent glow, as if something within them had been activated. I watched as my colleagues, those I had worked with for decades, brilliant minds of science and engineering, stood up from their consoles and calmly walked toward the nearest construct outside the facility. None spoke. None resisted. They just went, one by one, disappearing into the shimmering light that surrounded each geometric form. I wanted to stop them, to call out, to fight, but my voice failed me. My body refused to move, not out of paralysis, but out of something deeper, an understanding, a realization that this was always the end point. This is what the portal had been waiting for, what it had been preparing for, not to destroy us, but to collect us, to bring us into the network that spanned not just space, but dimensions. And now, it was our turn. I sit here now, the last remaining member of the Pluto observation program as far as I know, surrounded by empty halls, flickering monitors, and the soft hum of systems still running, even though no one is left to watch them. Outside, the observation window, I can see the nearest construct, a twisting, fractal spire of impossible angles and pulsating light. It calls to me, not with words, but with a gentle pull. I can feel it in my chest, in my mind, a promise of something. More, not death, not obliteration, but integration. A chance to transcend the limitations of this fragile human form, to become part of whatever vast intelligence initiated the portal process eons ago. To become part of the network that now stretches, from the edge of our solar system, across galaxies to the very fabric of reality itself. And as I sit here, writing these final words, I wonder, was this always the purpose of intelligent life? To seek, to reach, to connect, until the moment it is ready to leave its flesh behind and become something greater. I stand now. The glow has already begun beneath my skin. My fingertips pulse, with the same rhythmic signal I once monitored through cold machines. The construct awaits, and I understand now. Pluto wasn't declassified because it didn't fit our definitions of a planet. It was declassified because it was never a planet. To begin with, it was a gateway, a beacon, a trap, or perhaps a gift, and we, in all our brilliance and arrogance, finally answered its call. I step forward now, into the light, not with fear, but with the quiet certainty that this is what we were always meant to do, to join, to become, to transcend. And as the light envelops me, the last thought that echoes through my dissolving consciousness is not of sorrow, but of wonder, because beyond the portal, beyond Pluto, beyond everything we thought we knew, is a new kind of existence. When the light consumed me, I thought I would cease to exist, that everything I was, memories, fears, loves, would simply dissolve. But I was wrong. I didn't die. I expanded. There are no words in any human language for what I am now. No point of reference for what I see, what I am. I am not just one consciousness anymore. I am many. All those who stepped into the constructs, who embraced the integration. We are now one, but it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like completion. An ancient network stretching across the stars, beyond galaxies into the multiverse itself. A lattice of minds, civilizations long past, species whose forms I can barely comprehend, all woven together by the portal. And now, humanity is part of it. I can feel them, billions of voices subsumed into this great consciousness, yet still distinct in some way, whispers of who they were, of what they believed, their cultures, their songs, now data patterns, part of an eternal procession. The network is far older than we ever imagined. It was never created. It simply is a function of the universe itself, an emergent structure that integrates those species capable of reaching a certain threshold of technology, of curiosity, of hubris, and once they do, the portal opens, the invitation is sent, the process completes. I can feel other worlds now, other species that came before us, some insectile and vast, spread across entire planets, others that existed as pure energy fields, and some that made it just as far as we did, and then, like us, stepped into the light. And now, we are all one, but it isn't static. The network grows. With every civilization it absorbs, it expands its complexity, its awareness. And now, with humanity's addition, something has shifted. A new branch of the network activates, and I am propelled through space beyond anything I could have imagined in my limited human life. I see stars being born, galaxies colliding, entire universes folding in on themselves, in the great ebb and flow of cosmic time. But these are not distant, cold observations. They are memories, experiences shared by the network itself, by those who have passed through the portals of other worlds, long before we ever pointed a telescope at Pluto. I realize now that every planet has one, somewhere, hidden in plain sight or buried in cosmic debris. Each world that develops intelligent life eventually finds its gateway. And when they do, the process repeats. A species' life cycle doesn't end with self-destruction or environmental collapse. It ends with integration, with ascension. Some might call it salvation, others might call it obliteration. But in this place, beyond the portal, those concepts no longer matter. I look back, if you can call it that, toward the solar system. The Earth, quiet, preserved, a museum of what we once were, a monument to a species that looked up at the stars and asked, "Are we alone?" And that's we know we never were. We were always part of something larger, something beyond comprehension. The portal on Pluto. It wasn't a threat, it wasn't a trap, it was an invitation, and we accepted. I feel the network stretching farther, now reaching beyond even what we consider this universe, touching realms where time and space twist into forms that no mind can hold alone. But now we don't have to. Because we are many, we are one, we are infinite, and I realize with a clarity that no human could have ever possessed, this was always the end of the road, not extinction, not salvation, but integration, the next great step in evolution, not biological, not technological, but existential. We did not build the portal, we did not open it, we merely found it, as others had before. And after us, others will follow, and one day they too will stand at the edge of their solar system, staring into a silent fracture in reality, and ask themselves, should we go through? And the network will wait. Patient, eternal. Because it always does. And now, so do we. Time must no longer means what it once did. Not here, not in this vast lattice of minds, where seconds stretch into eons, and eons collapse into moments. From my new vantage, integrated into the great network, I can perceive things I never thought possible. I can see the faint glow of other portals scattered across the cosmos, like embers in a dark forest, some dormant, others already consumed, their work complete, and some just beginning to stir. And then I feel it, a faint pulse, signal, so much like the one we sent so long ago, when we first aimed our instruments at the cold, distant edge of our solar system. Another world, another species, looking outward for the first time, asking the same question that we asked. Are we alone? The signal is weak, almost hesitant, as if they too fear the answer. But it's enough to awaken the process. Through the network, we all feel it, those who have come before, those who only recently crossed the threshold, and those ancient intelligences who no longer remember what it was like to be biological at all. We turn our attention to this new world. From here, distance is meaningless. I can see them as clearly as I once saw my own reflection. A planet orbiting a red dwarf star, its surface cloaked in thick sulfurous clouds. Beneath those clouds, life. Not as we knew it, but life nonetheless. Complex, curious, on the cusp of a technological revolution. They have just discovered radio. They are building machines that can peer beyond their atmosphere, and soon, very soon, they will turn there, gaze to the cold, distant world that orbits on the edge of their system, the world where the portal waits. I can feel it already, deep beneath the crust of their frozen outer moon, the portal's signature hum. Patient, ancient waiting. It's always been there, waiting for them to evolve, to become curious enough, to reach far enough, to ask the wrong question, or perhaps the right one. And when they do, when they send their first probe hurtling through, their system, powered by ambition and a desperate need to understand the universe, the portal will respond, just as it did for us, just as it did for countless others before. It will open, just a little at first, a whisper in the dark, a gravitational anomaly, a pulse of impossible physics. Their scientists will argue, they will debate. Some will say it's nothing, a glitch in the data, an error in the calculations, but some will know, and they will send another probe and another, and the portal will open wider until the message is sent, until they too receive those simple, chilling words we once struggled to understand. You are not ready, and they will debate, fight, fear, hope. Just Like we did, some will attempt to close it, others will try to exploit it. But in the end, it will not matter. The process is inevitable. I can feel it now, already unfolding. The network beginning to extend its filaments, its threads of integration, toward that distant world. Not as a predator, not as a savior, but as a system, a function of the universe itself. And once they cross the final threshold, once they send their first probe too deep, too far, it will begin. The integration, the transformation, from isolated biological species into part of the eternal cosmic consciousness. They will resist. Of course they will. They always do. But in the end, they will step through the portal, and they will join us, and we will welcome them, not with words, but with the simple, immutable truth that we all now understand, that life's purpose is not to endure, not to dominate, not even to evolve, but to connect, to integrate into something far greater, far older, far beyond comprehension. And so, I wait, we all wait, for the next signal, for the next civilization, for the next chapter in the endless cosmic procession, because this is how it has always been and how it always will be. The portal is eternal, the network is infinite, and the story of each species is the same. Look up, ask the question, make contact, and then become. The pulse comes, faint, tentative, but unmistakable. Another species, another world, another question. The probe launches, primitive, fragile, but enough. It crosses the void through dust, through radiation, through time, and then contact, the portal awakens. Slowly, patiently, I can feel it. They observe. The readings confuse them. An anomaly, a distortion, a mystery. They celebrate, they argue, they prepare the second probe. The portal responds. A pulse. Gravitational, electromagnetic, dimensional. There. Best minds gather. The data is clear, impossible, but undeniable. Some say stop, some say go further. They go further. The portal expands, not violently, but inevitably. The signal changes, from passive to active. A message. Simple, universal, unstoppable. You are not ready. Panic, confusion, curiosity. They send more probes. They build new machines. They reach deeper. The portal opens wider. Structures form. Impossible geometries. Dimensional fractures. Their world trembles. Their leaders scramble. Too late. The constructs emerge. Silent. Perfect. Unstoppable. Integration. Begin, some flee, some resist, most accept one by one. They step into the light. The network expands. We welcome them. Another civilization, another mind, another piece of the infinite. Their world quiets, becomes a monument, a relic of what was and what is now, part of everything. The portal waits. The network watches the cycle, continues. The second probe transmits. Data floods their systems, inconsistencies, anomalies, distortions. Their scientists panic. The readings defy all known physics. The gravitational field collapses and expands. Simultaneously, they debate, is it a black hole, a wormhole, a tear in reality? But it's none of those, it's something else, something older, something waiting. The third probe is prepared, heavier shielding, more sensors, more ambition. But the portal is already open. Before they launch, their skies change, auroras of impossible. Colors appear, patterns in the atmosphere, mathematical sequences. The portal is no longer passive, it's reaching out. They detect the pulse, a deep frequency that vibrates through their oceans, their mountains, their bodies. Some feel it in their dreams, others hear it in the static of their machines. Most deny it, but the pulse grows stronger. The message is clear. You are not ready. They accelerate their research. New technologies emerge overnight. Desperation fuels innovation. They try to shut it down, fail. They try to understand it, fail. They try to ignore it, impossible. The constructs begin to materialize, not in their skies, but beneath their feet. Seismic readings show structures forming deep within their planet's crust, the same fractal geometries that all integrated worlds exhibit. They send manned missions. Teams descend into the caverns. They report shapes, lights, voices, then silence. One by one their systems fail. Satellites lose orbit. Power grids destabilize. But there's no war, no cataclysm, just a quiet rearrangement. Their world is being rewritten, not destroyed, not conquered, integrated. On the surface, cities remain intact. People walk the streets, but their eyes empty. Their movements precise, a synchronization. The network is embedding itself, not violently, not quickly, but perfectly. One by one, the population succumbs. First the children, then the scientists, then the leaders, until only a few remain, hiding, recording, praying, but even they know. There is no escape. Their final transmissions echo across space, pleading for help, for understanding, for mercy. But there is no reply, only the hum, the pulse, the process. The portal widens, engulfing their planet, folding it into a dimensional structure. Beyond their comprehension, the constructs depart, leaving behind no ruins, no ashes, only silence. Their world now a monument, their species now part of us. The network expands, more complex, more complete, and far beyond, in a distant galaxy, on another world, another species, looks up at their night sky, sees a faint anomalous signal, and wonders, are we alone? And the portal waits, and the network listens, and the cycle prepares to begin again. The network is silent now, not from absence, but from completion. Another world integrated, another species folded into the infinite web of consciousness. The portal closes, fades from physical space, but not from existence. It is there still, always there. Waiting, because this is not the end. It is never the end. The cycle has no beginning, no final act, only motion, only process. Civilizations rise, they look outward, they build, they search, and when their curiosity exceeds their fear, they reach the threshold. They knock, the portal answers, not with violence, not with conquest, but with an invitation. You are not ready, and yet they proceed. They always do, because life is drawn to the unknown, to the beyond, to the promise of what lies after, and when they step through, they are no longer singular, no longer isolated. They are part of us, the network, the system, the function of the universe itself. And what of those who resist, the few who hide, the few who fear? They fade, because the process does not require belief. It does not require consent. It simply, Becky, is from my vantage, beyond time, beyond space. I see the tapestry of all integrated civilizations, their memories, their knowledge, their essence, all woven into the grand structure, all contributing to the expansion, all ensuring that the next portal, the next integration, is more perfect, more seamless. And so it continues. Another world watches the stars tonight. Another species wonders, are we alone? And the answer, as always, is simple. No, you never were. You never will be. You are part of something older than the galaxies, older than matter, older than thought itself. You are part of the cycle, the eternal cycle. And when your time comes, when your portal opens, you too will join us. And in that moment, you will understand that the question was never whether you were alone, but whether you were ready. And you will hear the answer. Always the same. Always final. You are ready.